What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video today, and in this video we'll be taking another look at my collection. We're going to do things differently in this episode because, as you may know, Airliners International is this month, and to celebrate the occasion as I continue these festivities here on the channel, we're going to be taking a look back at my top 10 best Airliners International snags. At Airliners International, I've been able to acquire so many awesome models that I wouldn't have otherwise dreamed of getting from my typical online retailers. Now, this show has helped me open up my boundaries, and I've been able to pick up a lot of other cool models that I wouldn't have otherwise considered as well. So not only have I been able to find some awesome rare models, but I've also been able to pick up some really cool ones that I would have otherwise just passed up on in favor of others. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the list. Coming in at number 10, we have the GeminiJets 1:400 scale United Airlines Boeing 727-200 in the Battleship Gray livery. This model I picked up at my first Airliners International convention in Chicago 2022. And this particular model, I remember getting it from a private vendor. I don't remember how much it was exactly, but it was a pretty good deal, which is why I picked it up. It was probably like 40 or 50 bucks for it. And usually these things don't pop up on eBay that often. And if they do, I usually see them go for quite a bit, possibly up to double for what I paid for this thing. But this model has proved critical for my retro FSD project, as I've been able to utilize it in a handful of updates for the project, especially around the late 90s and early 2000s, which is when this type would have predominantly flown into the city, especially with this livery. This was introduced in 1993 and has become quite the staple within retro aviation, and especially more into like modern classic stuff, since this livery lasted well up until 2012 or so, when a 777 was the last aircraft to wear this livery before being repainted into the United Continental Merger livery, or Unicon as I like to call it. Moving up to number 9, we have another 727 and another retro FSD model. In this case, we have the GeminiJets 1:400 scale Western Airlines Boeing 727-200 in the Flying W livery. This model I acquired at the next year's Airliners International show in Dallas 2023. This is my first big airliners show. The Chicago one, of course, was pretty big, but the Dallas one, that was the first show where I was able to do a bunch of other fun things, like a tour even, and just have more time with plane spotting and checking out the ballroom and everything in between. Such a great show that was. And this came from a table that had a lot of old GeminiJet stock that was like, I think they were all new in box, if I remember right. And this particular model, if I remember right, this was about 59 bucks. And just because it was Western, I had to pick this up. And Sioux Falls did get these for quite some time alongside the 737-200s. So this is also a very big model for the Retro FSD project. And I did a Retro FSD update using this model not long after the show passed. So great model to have, and this was released in about 2005 or so by GeminiJets. So a very old model, and of course, the perfect theme for the table that I got this model off of. Moving to number 8, we have a very big aircraft, the Jumbo Jet. This is the GeminiJets 1:400 scale Eastern Airlines Boeing 747-100 with a Pan Am hybrid livery. Now, Eastern had a couple of these way back when. They were also supposed to get some 747-200s. One was actually painted in Eastern colors, but it was never taken up by the airline. There's a couple photos that are floating around on the internet of it wearing Eastern colors, but of course, not in possession of Eastern Airlines. So this model came from another private vendor at the 2022 show in Chicago, and I got this for a really, really, really good deal alongside a bunch of other Eastern Airlines models. And yeah, this thing is just truly incredible, and I got a whole bunch of Eastern models. I do need to do an episode of my collection on my Eastern Airlines fleet, because a good chunk of it consists of models that I got from the 2022 show in Chicago. But this is another lovely model, a very old GeminiJets release. In fact, so old that it does lack the antennas on the wingtips. So, lacking that detail can be quite a nuisance for some, but just considering the age of it and the deal that I was able to get this for, certainly a negligible thing that I could live with in this case. But who knows, maybe someone like Phoenix or NG, if they ever get to using that mold and actually, making updates to it, but that's a whole nother story, then maybe I could replace it, but we'll see what happens. Moving to number 7, we have something other than Boeing for once, as we have this Aero Classics 1:400 scale Ozark Airlines Douglas DC-910. Now, this is another retro FSD model, as you could probably tell by the size and, of course, the airline. And this is a very old Aero Classics release from like 2001. And this model is notable for the fact that it has a screw in the belly, which was a distinct characteristic of all of the Gen 1 Aero Classics, which is a term used to distinguish a lot of the OG Aero Classics releases from some of the newer ones that came out after. And that was the way that they used to put together the models. They would just use the screws before they moved to the traditional glue to put everything together, and sometimes it has mixed results, other times it does relatively well. This I got at the Dallas show in 2023, and this was also from a private vendor. I think it was like $40 if I remember right. And I did see this initially, and I did juggle between getting it and not getting it, but knowing that I did need an Ozark DC-9 for the Retro FSD project. I already had one with the Aero Classics release from 2022 on the Stretched Dash 30 series. I decided to get this anyway just because I did need a DC-910 eventually for this project, which I did use in the 1968 update, so feel free to go check that out. But either way, this is a very lovely model despite its primitiveness, and it's definitely a gem nonetheless, so very happy to have this from the DFW show in 2023. Moving up to number 6, we have this Aero Classics 1:400 scale Delta Airlines Boeing 767-200 with the Spirit of Delta livery. Specifically, this is the 767 tail variant that appeared at the Farnborough Air Show in 1982, shortly after Delta Airlines took delivery of this aircraft. Of course, this is kind of a little bit of bias just because Airliners International is going to be in Atlanta, and the backdrop for this show is going to be this specific aircraft, albeit with the full Spirit of Delta titles. I'll definitely be sure to pick up a model of one at the show if I can find one, but hopefully there's a good plethora of them there. You would think, but we'll see what happens. This one I acquired at the 2022 convention in Chicago. I think this came off of Buchair USA's table. I did not know the vendor name all that well during the time of the Chicago show, but by the time Dallas came around, the name definitely became a lot more familiar. So his table is excellent. He's got a lot of stock with predominantly like Aero Classics, GeminiJets, but he does have some Phoenix and JC Wings. So mainly the mainstream brands he'll carry at this show. And he's got the big cardboard boxes so you can browse through them all, and eventually you'll find something that may be of your interest. And he does have NGs as well. I do remember seeing NGs at the Kansas City show as well. So be sure to check out his table, because I'm sure he'll have a lot of great stuff. But this model, of course, with the recency bias coming into play, I guess, for the fact that Airliners International is in Atlanta in the same room, if you even call it a room, but I guess a hangar is a more proper terminology, the same hangar as this exact aircraft. This is why I placed it here at number 6. Some of you might get a kick out of this one. Moving into the second half at number 5, we have this Gemini 200 Eastern Metro Express de Havilland -6 200 Twin Otter. This model I picked up at the Dallas show in 2023, so I know we haven't even hit up any models from the Kansas City show yet. I did kind of want to highlight some of the older models that I got from the previous 2 conventions prior to Kansas City, so Chicago and Dallas. In this case, this came from the Dallas show in 2023, and the story behind this is this was at Mike Chu's table, I believe it was, and on the last day of Airliners International, all the vendors love to discount their stock because they would hate to leave the show with a lot of stuff still in their hands. So they'll drop prices on basically everything. And in the case at Mike Chu's table, a lot of the Gemini 200s were discounted quite significantly. And this particular one was only $49. So I hesitated on this, and Connor did make a short of me contemplating the decision on whether or not to buy it, so you can go check that out and see how I react to it. But eventually I caved in, and this is the last purchase that I made at the Dallas show. But a great model to have nonetheless, and I'll definitely do a retro review on this. As for the retro reviews that I have done, actually, yeah, I've only done one on the Ozark DC-910 as of the ones that we've gone through so far. But the last couple, we do have a couple of retro reviews on that, or at least there will be one on, at least on one of them. But let's continue with the list. Coming in at number 4, we have the NG Models 1 to 400 scale Delta Airlines Lockheed L1011 TriStar with the bicentennial sticker. We finally have something from the Kansas City show in 2024, and in this case, it is a model that is the perfect theme for this upcoming convention in Atlanta. This I got off of Squatchy Diecast Hangers table for $65. And let me tell you, Squatchy's has some incredible deals, because at the Kansas City show, I also got a silver ATR for $50, a couple other ones as well, like an Aeroclastics Delta 737-200 Delta Flot for $50. That release had been out for, I think, about a year or so up to that point, by the time the Kansas City show came around, so the fact that they still had one in stock was great. So I snatched that one up to increase my Delta Flot collection. But in the case for this bird, I have always wanted a Delta TriStar, especially one of the NG releases, but I know that these things are very difficult to find. So the fact that there was one available at Squatchy's table was such a huge success. And I think he had a couple others as well, but they were taken by the time I got around to buying this bicentennial one. So I would have liked to have the regular livery, but the bicentennial one looks nice, and it complements the 727 that I got from GeminiJets at the show as well. We now move into the podium rankings, as at number 3 we have another Kansas City model. This is the GeminiJets 1 to 400 scale Emery Worldwide Douglas DC-870 freighter. This model was actually a free gift from Ed Aviation, formerly Aviation LAS, as he was known at the time of the Kansas City show, but he has since undergone a rebranding, so he's now Ed Aviation. I know Ed was trying to get rid of a bunch of models at the Kansas City show last year, so he actually gifted me this, knowing how much I loved retro aircraft, and this is specifically a perfect model for any retro collection, and I'm super fortunate to have such a model like this, and it goes really well alongside my other DC-8 freighters that I have from UPS and DHL, which are also Geminis. And this DC-8 mold is also phenomenal. I love the rolling gear on this, and the proportions are really good on it. So this is a great model for me to have, and I always love to highlight the acts of kindness that can happen in this hobby, because, you know, in this day and age, we definitely appreciate any bit of kindness that we can see or that we can get. So the fact that we had this out there was super awesome. So thank you, Ed, for this model. This is a super awesome one, and we'll certainly get to use it at some point down the line. I don't know when. Maybe I'll start a fictional retro airport in the future. We'll see what happens, but at any rate, it's certainly something to explore in the future. But now we'll move on to number 2. Coming in at number 2, we have the Seattle Model Aircraft 1 to 400 scale Western Airlines Boeing 737-200 with the Indian Head livery. This was another model that I picked up from Squatchy's table at the Kansas City show last year in 2024, and man, this is such a lovely model. $50. The only problems with it were some tarnish in the rear and also some zinc rot on the landing gear, so this is actually my first zinc rotter. And, you know, zinc rot is not a very exciting thing to talk about, but it is fascinating in a different way to read into it and see what models are affected, and to see if perhaps maybe a model that you have is affected by it. And thankfully I don't have any others that I know of, at least. So this is the only zinc rotter that I have. But this one being ranked pretty high is this was a partial white whale in a way, because the Western 737 was such a critical model for the Retro FSD project, and just the fact that it lasted so long. And there's also a postcard of one of these things parked at Gate 1 at the airport at the then new Costello terminal, probably taken around 1970 if I had to guess, because the Flying W livery was introduced that same year. So I imagine Western went pretty quick when it came to repainting their fleet. And then the other thing I love to highlight with this as well is the reaction that I have. So check out the reaction of when I found this thing. I've got too many options right now, guys. Oh boy.
You have to be kidding me right now. I literally just found one. Gavin, look what I found. Western 737. This is the Indian head. This is one of the 2 liveries I need. Oh my god.
Such a great memory from the show, and one of the just a true reminder as to the fun things that you can find at the show. You just got to look around. Sometimes you got to dig deep, but eventually you'll find a diamond in the rough, and there's certainly no shortage of those at Airliners International. And as a nice little bonus for you guys, I've decided to put both of my Western 732s together. So I've got the Indian head, of course, on the left, and then the Flying W, the newer livery, on the right. And that is the Aero Classics one, the true white whale, the last one that I needed. And I'll be sure to make a documentary covering those 3 white whales very soon. But for now, before we head into number 1, we'll take a look at 3 honorable mentions. Our first honorable mention for this list is going to be the GeminiJets 1-400 scale American Airlines Airbus A321 with the flagship Valor livery. This model I acquired at the Dallas show in 2023, and this proved perfect because I saw this livery at least 3 times. Once when I was on the SkyTrain around the airport, and then twice more while spotting, and I saw it again as I was leaving Dallas. It was actually 4 times that I saw this aircraft, which is just crazy. So, not only is this a really cool livery, but just the sentimental value that this has for me personally with how many times I saw it in Dallas, but I haven't seen it since. Hopefully it does make a return, especially with the Midwest Honor flight that we have here out of Sioux Falls. We did get the PSA Heritage recently, so it makes me confident that eventually they'll be able to get this aircraft scheduled. It would be perfect. I mean, this is literally the perfect aircraft for something like this because it's one last trip of honor, as they like to say. And this is a perfect way for those that deserve to be honored with a trip out to DC. This is the perfect ride to go to and from on. So one day we'll get it here, but for now, this is a lovely model from the Dallas show. And then going back to the Chicago show for the next 2, the second honorable mention is this Aero Classics 1-400 scale Eastern Airlines Boeing 720 with the Golden Falcon livery. This is such an awesome livery, and it's honestly one of my favorites from Eastern, right next to the more iconic hockey stick livery. So this Golden Falcon livery was applied to most of Eastern's fleet the very early days of the jet age, and this is one of the aircraft I got to wear it, this one with the full Fly Eastern Airlines titles. This model was off of a private vendor that was not the same as the ones that I got all the other Eastern models off of, so this one here is still very nice. It was a little dusty still, but otherwise this model is perfect. Some Aero Classics 707s and I think some 720s as well, they've been known to have zinc rot. Luckily, mine does not have it, so that is great to report. And then our third and final honorable mention is going to be this GeminiJets 1-400 scale JetBlue Airways Airbus A320 with the high-rise tail. This actually came off of DG Pilot at the Chicago show in 2022, and he had it at his table, so I decided to pick it up because I've been lacking JetBlue, specifically on the A320s. I did have the tartan or plaid tail release by Velocity Models, which is like just a weird brand that existed for a couple years. But this high-rise was great to add to get some variety with the tails and whatnot, because JetBlue obviously has a bunch of these tails, which are being replaced by the new all-blue liveries that they're applying to their aircraft pretty effectively, I would say. I don't know exactly how many aircraft have the new livery now, but I think still a majority of them have this older livery, though that number, I imagine, is quickly diminishing. But great to have for now, and we'll definitely flip this when the old livery becomes not necessarily irrelevant, but it's just not flying anymore. But now, let's move on to number 1. So number 1, this has to be a model that has so much sentimental value and has an incredible story to tell from start to finish. You can probably guess where this one is going, to be honest, and I'm just going to plop it into the frame, but that, my friends, is going to be the Aero Classics 1-400 scale North Central Airlines Douglas DC-930 with the Aqua livery. If you watch my channel long enough, this needs absolutely no introduction whatsoever, but to summarize, my friend Connor found this at the Chicago Airline Collectible Show in May 2024. After went back to his place in Oklahoma, he then went on a really big trip to Europe in early to mid-June. And then after that, did a bunch more flying within the U.S. before getting to Airliners International in Kansas City, where it was very generously gifted to me. I can't thank him enough for this, and this was a big piece of the puzzle for Herman's Odyssey, which I released last month, so go check out that documentary. That documentary was so much fun to put together, and especially getting to tell the story that this DC-9 had, with not only the journey that it had, but how Connor found it at the show, and what his thoughts were when he did spot it at that table, because it was $30 as the sticker indicated on the box, but he offered $25 for it, so that was accepted by the vendor that was there. And I should also probably project some thanks to that vendor, the one that was running the table that had this North Central. I don't know who the gentleman was, but if you are out there, I'm very fortunate that you had this model for sale at the show so that my friend could pick this up for me to help me on my mission for Herman's Odyssey, which of course is a mission that is currently complete, but once a new North Central Airlines model gets released, that mission will be briefly incomplete, but I will obviously pre-order any new North Central model that gets released. But it is time for me to start finding the Gemini 200 ones, the DC-930, and the Convair 580 that they made. But of course, they are very difficult to find. So, does someone have them at Airliners International in Atlanta? Please shoot me a message. We can talk about offers there. And that'll do it for this top 10 list of my best Airliners International snags over the years. Obviously, I've only been to 3 shows, so, in all honesty, I didn't have too much material to work with, but since I've acquired like an average of 20 models for each of the three shows that I've been to, in all honesty, now that I think about it, I probably had more material to work with than I would have expected, but certainly fortunate to be in a position to buy as much as I've been able to over the years at this show. But rest assured, Atlanta should be more of the same, obviously with more responsible spending, because as the story has been told before with the Chicago show, I blew through my budget in the first 30 minutes. Don't make the same mistake that I did if you're going to the show for the first time. It is not one that you want to replicate, because it's not fun when you go through a 4-figure budget within 30 minutes. And don't ask me how I did it. It just happened. It was just the ebb and flow of going to this show for the first time and just being around a whole bunch of models. So rest assured, I've learned from my mistakes. And it's always fun telling that story to other people, because it'll give them something to learn before they make the same mistake that I do. But this is a very lovely list of models, and if you know of any models that maybe I missed in this list, please leave a comment. We can certainly discuss. I'll be sure to make a part 2 on this in the future after this year's show and even next year's show and the year after. I'll try to maybe do this every 3 years or so, if I am still able to continue attending Airliners International annually in the long term, which is my plan. That's my goal, but life can be unpredictable, and I'm certainly going to be in a different position 3 years from now as I am here making this video. But rest assured, my goal is to still come on out to the show and contribute to it in any way that I can, because I'm so passionate about this show and about the hobby as a whole, so being able to come out to the show and have a lot of fun is certainly something that I never take for granted, and I always love this show no matter what. With that being said, that is the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.